There is a note here in the chat from Gene, and I just want to mention that Mimecast, Proofpoint, Advanced Email Threat Protection to prevent clicking on malicious links. Those type of programs, and by the way, Proofpoint is a great client of mine. Those type of link replacers are getting much better at detecting what's malicious and what's not. Thank you so much, Gene, for bringing that up. That's a brilliant suggestion. And for those of you, this is not stuff for the most part you're going to do on your own. But if you just talk to your technology person or your security provider and say, hey, can I get an email link sniffer that will tell me when it's a bad email? That gets rid of a lot of the trouble. All right, the game of knowns. The game of knowns. Here's the reality. We talk about all of this new stuff that's coming, the Internet of Things that we're going to brush on, and other type of threats. But I have to tell you that 81% of all of the threats that we see, that Verizon sees in their tests, 81% are things that we already know exist and are a problem. We call it the game of knowns. So for example, we just talked about system backups, right? If you don't have a system backup, maybe in the cloud, protected, encrypted, maybe on a little hard drive that you take back and forth to a different location so that it's safe. If you don't have that, or if you haven't tested that it works, if you haven't gone and looked at a file and make sure it's backing up constantly, faulty backups are the number one risk that we see. Somebody has a backup, right? They go to Carbonite or iDrive or whatever, but they have never tested that they can restore the data. That's really important. By the way, I'm going to give you a little chart of all of this information of where I would go, the products I would use, and so forth. I'll email that either end of day today or tomorrow. So know that you're going to get this information. Outdated operating systems. If you are working on a system, a Macintosh older than Mac Sierra, or Windows that is older than Windows 10, you are working on an operating system that no longer gets proper security patches. And not having those patches means that it's easy for the criminals, the hackers, to get in the back end. Upgrade those systems of yours. And then once you've upgraded them, having automatic updates turned on so that your apps on your phone, your applications, your software on your computer, your operating system on your computer automatically updates. Those patches are what are so incredibly important for keeping those back doors that the criminals get in, keeping those closed. Again, this is not something you'll probably do. These are suggestions that you're going to go to your professional to help out with. And while they're there, Wi-Fi default. If you've got your Wi-Fi not properly configured inside of your home, it's super easy to sit out on the front patio and hack into your entire network. So having them set it up with changing the default passwords on the Wi-Fi device on your modem from CenturyLink or Comcast or whoever it is, turning on encryption so that you're protected, WPA2 plus encryption, so either 2 or 3. Again, these are all terms you don't have to perfectly understand. I'm going to give you the list to talk to your security provider or your IT person, or heck, if you've got a kid or a niece or a nephew that's young, they know how to do all of this stuff. So then we get into the cloud. Once we're outside of the house, we get into all of these cloud apps that we use. Everything from Facebook, Amazon, we bank in the cloud, and so forth. I'm a big fan of the cloud if it is configured properly, if you are using it wisely. Think about it. Some of these companies, Amazon, they spend millions of dollars every year protecting data in ways that you and I can't afford. So you have to go in and configure how you use those cloud settings. I don't care if it's your Gmail or if it's Salesforce.com or Facebook or your bank. It's really important. One of the best tips for cloud defense that you've probably heard before is two-step logins or two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication on your accounts. Now, if you would just in the chat, if you would let me know, just say yes or no if you already use two-factor authentication in some way. I'd love to see what kind of penetration we're working with here. Yes, 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 no. Yes, 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 sometimes, yes. On some, yes, sometimes. Okay, good. So I'm going to go a little bit more in depth here. For example, when you have two-factor authentication turned on at your Gmail, let's say, and by the way, there's all kinds of private stuff that comes in and out of that, where you bank and so forth. When you have it turned on and your Gmail account is lost in a database breach, let's say Google gets hacked in some way or Chase gets hacked and your information disappears. They've got your username, which is your email, and your password, which was part of the database. And then they go around to every bank on the earth, and they have a computer do this very quickly, and they try that username and password and see if they can get into it. Well, when you have got a two-step login or two-factor authentication, meaning you get a text to your phone, or you've got an app on your phone that generates a number, or you've got a key fob that ticks off a new password every time, it doesn't matter if your data has been breached elsewhere because the criminal doesn't have your phone or the key fob. They don't have that second factor of authentication, and that makes it much, much harder to get into your online accounts. Now, you may not know it, but with Obermeyer Wood, you have two-factor authentication inside of your portal. So let me say a couple things about that. Portal, you've probably, especially since COVID, been having to utilize a portal to get information back and forth. No more emailing it. I got to tell you how important it is that you learn to use that portal and that you actually use it. Emailing is not acceptable at all. You've got to get in on an encrypted connection, and that's what that portal is. Now, that portal also has two-factor authentication. You can go in and turn it on when you are inside the settings of that. I highly recommend that you do that because, again, even if that data is breached or lost in some way, they won't have that second device that gives them that second layer of protection. One of the greatest possible things that you can do. The other is password management software.
Hey, John.
You utilize password management software to generate and protect your passwords. Now, most of us are in the habit of, creating the same password and using it over and over with a dash and something at the end of it, or we use our dog's names or our kids' names. That is not acceptable. What happens is it gets breached over here. It gets breached in the Marriott breach, 500 million records. Or the Equifax breach, 300 million records, and then it gets used in your investments, in your private matters, your health, and so forth. When you have password management software, you're using a different long and strong password for every site. You don't have to remember it. It exists on your phone. It exists on your computer. You've always got it, and it's super strong. That keeps out those hackers who are doing what we call a brute force attack, where they're hacking your password by guessing over and over. We can talk about specific recommendations. If you put in the Q&A, we'll talk about the different brands of password protection. Our smartphones, which are supercomputers in our pocket, are stupid from a privacy and security perspective until we configure them. Until we tell them, hey, I want to lock out all of this sharing of information that I'm doing. It takes going into your settings to do that. So let me show you here what happens when you don't change your settings. This is from a study that we did with the New York Times. It's tracking smartphones. So every green little dot that you see is a smartphone that was eminently trackable using completely free software. You'll notice these are around the stock exchange. These are all of the different, and the Pentagon, all the different tracking of smartphones because people haven't changed their default settings. Here at Mar-a-Lago, so you can tell the huge implications. Now what they did is they took one smartphone in Central Park out of 100,000 and they followed it for the day. They saw all the different places where that smartphone went. And they also saw the order in which it went. So they could map out the exact pattern of where people went. Now, a lot of people say, why would I even worry about that? Well, I'll tell you what, when somebody's trying to socially engineer you or you have a decent net worth or above, there's a whole lot of reason they want to know where you're going. Locking those things down is so simple. My recommendation, and I do a whole program on just securing the smartphone because there's about 180 settings that you need to change. I'm going to give you one here that stops that type of privacy violation. And I'm doing it on an iPhone because my guess is about 90% of the people on this webinar utilize an iPhone. Inside of your settings and inside of the privacy tab, now many of you will have done this. When you go in there, you'll see all kinds of different options. You'll see privacy settings for your contacts, your calendars. You should go through every one of those when we're done here or sometime soon. But we're going to talk real quickly about location services. Location services, if you click on that button, you will see along this side here, you can tell when it's tracking your location. So, you know, ABC News is, I've turned it so that they never track. And when I'm using my Trail program, I want it to track while I'm using. And when I'm going to the theater, I never want it to track. The map program, of course, while using. Well, those by default are often set to always. They're always tracking you, and they're always selling that data to other vendors. They're selling it to Facebook in communication with your, or in connection with your profile and so forth. One simple thing that you can go through and change in 3 minutes. There's a bunch more of those, but that gets you started. The Internet of Things. We now have all of these devices, right? Watches that are computers, smartphones that are computers, refrigerators that connect to the internet, heart monitors, virtually everything is connecting to the internet, which has its benefits. We can communicate with doctors and so forth. It also has huge drawbacks. Super simple example is the Roomba vacuum. Some of you probably have a Roomba. It's got a camera on it. We just took it and put a laser on it so that we could see where the Roomba was going in the room and what it was doing. Not only was it taking photographs of what you have, it was also mapping out your square footage and sending that information off. Now, Roomba has said that they don't sell that information. I don't actually believe that. I think they sell images of the inside of your house. I think they sell all kinds of information, whether it's your refrigerator that's tracking stuff, we've seen it on insulin pumps that have been hacked or that have the data stolen. Everything connected to the internet has got the possibility of sharing information on you. Again, if you go into the default settings, if you have a Nest camera at home or a thermostat, you need to go in and custom configure those settings. That's how you minimize the chances of a problem. Won't guarantee it, because if it's digital, it is hackable. But for most of us, that's probably good enough to keep the hackers out. I was at a Las Vegas hotel recently, and I just went around and did a survey of all of the different devices that were connected to the internet, that were tracking me and sending that information to the hotel and letting them know how I behaved. Key card locks, a thermostat, the minibar, if I moved something, it was connected. The curtains were connected. Pandora, which was music. There was a game system, smart light bulbs, smoke detectors, voice over IP phone, motion sensors, refrigerator was connected, my tablet, my iPad, my computer, my watch. That's what was being collected on me as I went to this hotel. That's a great image of where we are headed as a society in terms of tracking that information. And if you don't read that data privacy policy, you don't know what's being shared. And that brings us to smart speakers, which a lot of people have questions on. Smart speakers like Alexa, like Google, Siri are collecting information all the time. So I want to play you this quick video to show you some of the information that they're starting to collect on us, other than just the words that we say when we talk to Alexa. So just think of Alexa as a search engine, right, that we would type into, and we might type, our kid might type bankruptcy because they're doing a report in school. And that information, of course, is then sold to your credit card company and your bank so that they know, oh, this person might be in bankruptcy. We may want to give them a different offer. That's why they track it all. Well, an Alexa, for example, is a search engine that is always listening. It's not just listening to the couple of words you type, it's listening to every conversation. So here's what's coming in these patents for things like Alexa.